intersection of good drinks, good music, and good times. This is Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations.
We're not leaving too far from home for this episode as we're staying in Kentucky, and we have a pretty cool singer-songwriter. His latest album, 206, is out now. Let's welcome in and get right to it with Josh Merritt.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm well. I'm trying to get a much-needed down day today. I've been on the road and on the move for feels like the last month, and today wasn't a down day. I ended up taking my kiddo swimming at a local pool here, but it was fun. We had a great time.
I was going to say, for those that don't know, Kentucky right now, when we're recording this at least, in the 90s and sunny.
Oh, it was brutally miserable. Well, like I told you, I just got home from Alaska. I just got back from my first time ever going up to Alaska, and it's just perfect weather up there. I mean, I'm a fat boy, so jacket and hoodie weather, that's my favorite, and it was that the entire time I was there. It was wonderful. Came back to a heat wave though.
I was going to say, you got a little bit of a shock to your system when you flew back in.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping we can make you relax. This is bar conversation, so because I know where you're from, and we'll get into that, I got a little Bradshaw Bourbon, which is made out there at Green River in Owensboro.
Oh, yeah.
What are you drinking tonight? What's your go-to drink?
I am drinking a whiskey sour for this episode, and that's one of my favorite cocktails. And actually, yesterday for Father's Day, we have a tradition. My dad likes to go to Churchill Downs for Father's Day, so we go to the horse track. And so they were serving their cocktails. I don't know if you can see because of the glare, but it's a cup from Churchill Downs,
Nice.
The 150th year this year. So I put it in that just to commemorate being there yesterday. But I made me up a whiskey sour with. And actually, my daughter's mom got me the new the Chris Stapleton Traveler whiskey,
Nice.
which is made out of Buffalo Trace. I think it's a fabulous whiskey. Actually, this is my first time trying it, and I was actually very surprised. I really like it.
And apparently, it makes a mean whiskey sour too, right?
Oh yeah, the best. They're my favorite. I actually judge. I love bougie cocktails, man, and I judge a place if there's a place that's like, oh, we're a premium cocktail place, I immediately order a whiskey sour. Most people would order like a old fashioned, I feel like, and judge it by that. But I think a whiskey sour is so simple, but also so easy to mess up if you're not exactly on the money. So if you got like a top notch whiskey sour, then I'll sample the rest of your menu.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a whiskey sour fan too. I think we're going to have a great conversation and maybe a little bit of a drink too. But I'm with you because I feel like a whiskey sour, if they get too much pre-made stuff or something like that, it just, you can tell, like you said, real quick, if they're doing too much pre-mix or able to actually juice their own stuff, it makes a big difference in a whiskey sour.
Sure, and even an upscale, cocktail bar with a pro mixologist. If you're having even half a busy night, I get it. You can't squeeze lemons all night, man. It's impractical. But most of the places that do it right do squeeze their own juices and make their own sour mix, at least before shift or something like that. And that's usually the kicker, man. There's a place here in town. I don't use this for my recipe, but most of the recipes use like egg whites, of course, and I'll mix that in every now and then. I usually don't at home, but I like them on the go like that. But there's a place here in town that uses just a little bit of nutmeg on top, and it's the perfect ingredient. I don't know what you would never think that for a whiskey sour, but just sprinkled right on top of the foam. Kind of makes it look pretty, but it also, the scent of it it sets it off a little bit too. So
I like it. See, we could talk all day on this, but I do know you do music too. So
I play a little, right? And drink a lot.
But for you though, you grew up in a musical family. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. My grandpa Merritt, he told me when I was very young. He said, son, if you learn to play an instrument, you'll never be bored. You'll never not have something to do. And that's the way he raised all my aunts and uncles as well. And they grew up from a very poor farm family, you know, through the 60s and 70s and 80s, when entertainment was very hard to come by, especially if you weren't sitting fat, you know. And my dad's one of 14 children. He's the middle of 14 children, 9 boys and 5 girls, and almost all of them play some kind of an instrument, mostly the bluegrass variety, and sing or do something. There's a handful of them that don't, but most of them do. That's kind of what they did for fun.
Well, and then for you, did you really start playing of all things, the stand-up bass as a kid?
Yeah, I sure did. Man.
Was it as big as you?
It was bigger. So I was 8 years old, and we were at this jam out, and my Uncle Curtis played the upright bass. And Dad would drag me out to these jam outs he would have with my uncles and stuff. And, you know, when you're so young, it's not that you don't like it, but usually if there's other kids there, you're running around playing with them while the grown-ups were playing and stuff. But I remember I was 8 years old, and something about that bass just, it caught my attention for the first time. And I asked my Uncle Curtis at the end of the night, I said, hey, can you teach me to play that? And to the best of my knowledge, I think he was like, no, but here, you can take it home with you if you want, and you can figure it out. So my dad's pretty musically inclined all around, so he knew enough about it to teach me how to play it. But I had to stand in a kitchen chair when I played it. I would stand in the kitchen chair beside it, and that's how I learned to play the upright bass.
I was going to say the upright bass is one of those that you don't see I feel like a whole lot in all the bands, because it takes up a lot of room in a van.
Yeah, especially if you're traveling around in a van. Yeah, it's heck, you got to sleep somewhere, man. I've talked to old bass players that played for bluegrass outfits and stuff, and asked them that exact question, like, what the heck? And he's like, man, it sucks. He's like, we have to put my bass outside on the ground before we go to bed. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. Like, what else are we gonna do, you know? So
I was gonna say, I had a buddy that would that I still to this day plays bass and more of like jazz and stuff like that. And for a long time, he had a PT Cruiser, and I was like, how do you get that in that doesn't seem like a good idea? And it took up the whole car.
Yeah. I fit a lot of stuff in some small spaces, man. I'm still doing that in my everyday life as well. So
you're a great Tetris player, right?
I am, man. I can get it in, man.
Now we mentioned the stand-up bass, but you know, like I said at the top of the show, you're a singer-songwriter. So when did the singing part come in?
Probably not till I started to try to learn to play guitar when I was in middle school. So I was probably in the 7th or 8th grade, and that was just playing around the house and learned, just took an interest in the guitar at all, you know. But probably somewhere in the first part of high school, I ended up joining my first band, which is like an alt rock band with some buddies, and we were singing like Three Doors Down and stuff like that. And I was just the singer. They just hired me to be the singer, and it was my first time doing anything like that. And I was in that band for like a year before one of the members was like, "Oh, you play guitar?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know." And I'm like, "What the heck, man?" And so I wasn't that good, or I didn't feel like I was that good at that point anyway. So I, like a lot of probably guys in that position do, I took a crash course and just kind of learned as I went from there on out. But then very quickly it was a very good lesson to learn, because before that I had to rely on somebody else to play with, and then that was the thing. After I started playing and singing a lot more, I realized that heck, I mean, it's great playing with the band, but I can go out and sing some of my own songs or other people's songs just by myself sometimes if I want to, if I learn how to do this. So
I was gonna say the acoustic sets are always fun to mix in there, and like you said, your dad was in a whole family was into music. Was there ever a chance that you wouldn't get into music or be around it all the time?
There wasn't a chance that I probably wouldn't at least have it as a hobby. I don't think, but yeah. So when I first got out of high school, I went into heating and air, which is what my dad's done his whole life, and I was in that for about a year and figured out, like, man, I need to go to college, figure something else out, because this might be a good job. I don't know if this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So I actually have my sights set on being a police officer, believe it or not. And I went to school and got my criminal justice degree, and ended up getting a degree in criminal justice. And it wasn't until I was like 21 or 22. I was still in college, and I started playing bar gigs and stuff at night, and yeah, it's a long story, but I got the chance to go on this tour through the Florida Keys, and right before I was scheduled to go for the police academy, and I went on this 2-week trip to the Florida Keys and toured the Keys and kind of got a taste of the musician life, the real musician life, and I came back and I thought, nah, this is what I'm gonna have to do, man. I'm gonna have to at least give this a try. So been doing it ever since, honestly.
What was it like to make that leap?
Oh, it was scary, and I've always considered myself a pretty sensible person. I'm somebody that can make a plan, and I don't mind. I don't mind the travel of getting somewhere. Even when I was a kid, man, we go on vacation. There's some people that just cannot stand the ride there, and it's all about the destination. And I was always somebody that could make, have fun on, some of my favorite memories of the trips to vacations, and even to this day, like, I'm very good at making a plan, a long-term goal, and seeing it out over a long course of time without getting too impatient. So I was 21, almost 22, I guess, when I went on that trip to the Keys, and I came home, and I was sensible enough to know, like, I'm not just going to go in and tell them I quit my job, I'm done. So I put a plan together, and I was like, well, I had a truck I was paying on at the time. I was a single man, no kids or anything. I was a young man, but I had a truck I was paying on. I had a couple credit cards out, stuff like that, and I thought, you know what? Let's make a plan. Let's give it a year and throw all our money into getting out of debt and putting myself in a position to where I wasn't going to fail once I got out there. And that's what I did. And it took me, I was 23, almost 24 when I finally quit my day job. No, it was 24, actually. It's September 22nd of 2014. So September 22nd of this year will be 10 years I've been a full-time musician. Just been playing music for a living, so.
Hey, and it seems to be going well still, and we'll get into the albums that you've been able to put out. But before that, you talk about growing up around bluegrass and getting to go down and doing some tours. What music, what artists did you grow up on?
Man, 90s country, man. Dipped and soaked in 90s country. My dad was a big 80s country guy, I feel like, growing up. And 70s, some 70s rock, but really my dad liked a lot of bluegrass music, a lot of story, singer-songwriter type artist, kind of a lot of the mainstream stuff, but he listened to a lot of the songwriter stuff, and so I came up on that. The Eagles, a big Eagles fan, big Eagles in my house, and let's see, a lot of 90s country though, man. Travis Tritt's big influence, yeah, definitely. John Cowan, the Newgrass Revival, big influence. Yeah, I loved it.
And then, like I said, you're from Owensboro. You also grew up, spent some time in Somerset. What impact did, growing up in a couple different parts of Kentucky have on you musically and life?
Quite a bit, man. So I lived in Somerset from the time I was 8 years old until I was around 14 years old. So a big part of my life, big part of my childhood was spent there in eastern Kentucky, and it had a big impact on me all the way around. I think mostly just that I was dipped and soaked into another culture, and it's hard to believe that 3 hours away has so much different culture than Western Kentucky does, but it does. Western and Eastern Kentucky could very, very well be two different states. I've said that a lot. we're all proud to be from Kentucky, but I'm telling you, Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky, just two different places, two different ways of living, two different ways of talking. The dialect is different, I feel like, and but I loved it. I loved Somerset. I call Somerset my East Kentucky home, and I still try to go back to visit whenever I can. But I feel like my accent is it's definitely here, but I have a very thick accent compared to people from Western Kentucky. I get called out on it a lot, and I feel like that's something I took from East Kentucky for sure.
Hey, there's worse things you could take, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot worse things you could take from Eastern Kentucky. I promise you that. But no, I love it down there. Some of my first best friends were from there, and I've got so many great memories from growing up down there. First love was there, my first girlfriend was there. I learned all those things down there, and then moved back home to Owensboro, and I tell people all the time, I love my hometown. I love my hometown so much. They've been so great to me. I couldn't have had a career without my hometown when I was first getting started, man. There's enough clubs and pubs around here and they all do music. I could make a living just playing here, I think. Actually, I did for several years, and not have to go, mosey out into the country with the van. But it's left me in a place where I can go out and tour the country and visit new places and spread my art around. But I can also come home, and if I want to be home for a few weeks, I can. There's enough opportunity here in the tri-state area that I can book myself for a couple weeks here and stay home if I want to too. So, very blessed to grow up in a place like this. I don't think I would have had the career that I've had without growing up in a place like this.
Well, like you say, you get to come home, and when you're home, you're like you said at the beginning too. You're also a dad. You're doing stuff, being able to be with family.
Right.
What's it like to try to do all this by being a girl dad to boot?
Yeah, well, I love it. That's my life first, and has been for a long time. So I told you the story about I was 24 and finally went in and quit the old day job and everything, and so I quit my job September of 14, and I found out I was going to be a dad February of 15, I think. So yeah, just right after taking the leap, and that was a tough one, man, because it was like, oh, hang on, I need to go make some opportunity here, and maybe I need to go back and get a job and do those things. But it honestly turned into motivation for me, and it motivated me, and I put myself and promised myself that no, I'm gonna keep following this thing and seeing this thing out. And if I ever get in a position to where money's so tight that it's taken away from my daughter or the people around me, then we'll go find something else to do. But until then, if we can make this work, we'll keep doing this. Not just for me, but I've always kept the idea that I didn't want to look at my daughter when she's 21, 22 years old and saying, Dad, I've seen all these videos of you playing music and blah, blah. Like, why did you stop doing that? And be like, oh, well, you were born and I just hung it. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather it be the other way. I'd rather it be like, you were born and it motivated me to be the best that I could and work harder than I've ever worked, which it has, and it's kept me afloat. So, it's also motivated the way that I approach doing this, because there's several ways to do the job that I'm doing. A lot of people, they go get out in the van and they take off driving and they book as they go, and they just live out on the road for a long time. And I've chose to set myself up in a way where I book myself in a way where I'm home quite often. I'm home. I'm never out more than a couple weeks, and I'm home, and then I might travel again, then I'm home, and I've had opportunities to work with companies that would book me and probably put me in some bigger places and show me some bigger opportunities that might move this thing a little quicker. But I like the pace that I work at. I've got a great fan base and that I'm really proud of that really keep things going for me. And so as of right now, unless something just skyrockets off on its own, I'll probably do things the way I've been doing it, for the foreseeable future.
I was gonna say that it's something special to be able to be around family, watch your kids grow up, things like that. How important is family for you? You mentioned you being able to go on Father's Day to the Churchill Downs with family, things like that. I mean, got to be pretty important.
I love my family, and that's not to take away and say that people that go that end up out on the road, when opportunity knocks. Here's the thing: if I ever reached a point to where me going out on the road and living out there a little bit more created bigger opportunities for my family, that would be another opportunity, man, because I don't want to take myself away from my family any more than I have to right now, and my family doesn't want to take me away, and they never will. Even if the opportunity's knocked and I said, hey man, I could, we could have a nicer house or nicer cars if I go out there, they would still want me at home. But I think part of being a man and part of raising your family is being able to make those choices for them. No, they don't want to see you go out there and do it, but if there's opportunity for them that could better their lives, I think that's our job, is to go out there and seek those opportunities for sure.
Well, and you've been putting out some good music that is helping it out. Your latest album, 206, dropped earlier this year. Why that title? I feel like there's a unique story behind that number.
Yeah, there sure is, man. So this record was a relationship record, and I call it that versus a breakup record because I was in this relationship for a couple years that ended, obviously, but it was one of those relationships we were on again, off again. There were some breakups in between. It was a long-term relationship, though, a live-in relationship. We lived together. But after it finally met its end and was over, well after it was over, I ended up going back and looking through songs that I had written. And without even knowing it, I realized I had cataloged this relationship without even trying to. It wasn't the goal or the purpose, but I went back and looked and I thought, oh man, there's a song from the start of this relationship. Like when we met, I wrote a love song. Oh man, here's a song a couple of months later where the new was wearing off. We were starting to get on each other's nerves, and then you fast forward toward the end, there's a breakup song, and heck, I've even got a "Oh My God, I'm Lonely" song, and and then I even had a redemption song at the end. So I thought, man, that's something that people I think can relate to. And I said, so let's do a concept record and just make this way. The title itself, 206, was a number that my partner, the first date we ever went on, I remember we were out and we got the receipt and there was 206 on the receipt. I remember she just pointed at it and said 206, and we didn't elaborate on it. She didn't elaborate on it. And a couple weeks later, we're hanging out or whatever, and the clock in the truck says 206. I'm like, what is that? Why you keep pointing out 206? And she said, I don't know. It's just a number that follows me. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And it did. She would, and maybe it was because she was looking for it, or I don't know, but it did. She could point out 206 anywhere, and after we split up, I was on the road in Iowa, I think. I mix this up every time I say it, but I think I was in Iowa, and we had a day off, and I went to a palm reader just for fun. We were walking around this little city, and there was a palm reader there, and she read my angel numbers, and one of the numbers that popped up was 206, and I thought, well, I'll be damned, and I was like, well, what's the significance of 206? And she said it was an angel number that meant that it's a number for prosperity. Usually when you see that number, it means that there's a period of growth that's happening, maybe in that moment, maybe in the future to come. But it's a number of growth. And I thought, man, that just describes, no wonder she was seeing it. That whole relationship was about learning and growing and figuring out life. I was figuring out life. She was figuring out life. And I thought, man, what a better title, No one's going to understand it till I explain it to them. But for me, and for what the album means to me, there was no better synopsis for that than the 206. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, going back and kind of putting this album together, what was that like to kind of do a concept, and kind of maybe even pull older songs that might have been kind of sitting around in the vault for a while?
Yeah, it was great. I love the process of making records, man. I really do. It's something totally different, man. Because I think when you start out, or at least the way that it went for me, is when I first started playing music, and even still today, depending on what kind of shows I'm playing, you're going out and playing a lot of cover songs, and you start your career playing other people's songs, and maybe you're a songwriter, maybe you write songs and stuff, but most people don't jump right into the water playing their own stuff. And so when you finally get to, man, it's kind of a different thing. You're used to going out and doing this thing, but to me it's like sitting down to paint a picture or something, and it's the same creative process as sitting down and just starting and creating a picture and building something as you go, because maybe you've wrote a bunch of songs and put them together, and you've had them sitting around like you said, but then you have to take those songs and use them almost like a bunch of puzzle pieces sitting on a table and put them together in a way that they fit and in an order that they fit. And then you have to go back and figure out how you want them to sound. And the fun part about the studio is sometimes you get into the studio and sometimes it's exactly the way that you imagined it. And sometimes you get in there and by the time you get done recording the song, it's a completely different thing than you'd ever imagined. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But I love it. It's its own thing, and it's not for everybody. I know people that play music that love to write music, but they're not big on the studio. It's a very repetitive thing. You lock yourself in that place and close the blinds. And I've sat in the studio for 48 hours before with an engineer, just listening to something over and over and over and over and over again, trying to get everything perfect on it, And it's not for everybody. Some people like to write them and they'll go in and record them, but it's not their favorite part. But I have a deep appreciation for it. I like it.
Well, I was gonna say you've been able to put out some great albums, and when it comes to writing these, clearly you seem to like go a personal experience route a lot. So what is your writing style like?
Seems like it, yeah. It's mostly that, man. I'm a very inspirational writer, and so not everybody is. That's what I've learned is that a lot of people are. I'd say a lot of people, the majority probably could do better writing about themselves or an experience they had. It's definitely, it takes a deeper mind to sit down and write a song and say that you're going to write it's almost like sitting down to write a novel or something about just making up a story, That takes a whole other thing than taking an experience that you've had and trying to put it into words, Both a great way to write songs, but two different birds, I feel like. And I have songs that are both ways. I have songs that are written about other things, but so far, both the records that I've put out have been very personal. And the thing about it is, even Reynolds Station, my first record, when I was working on it, I knew it was going to be a concept record. So it's easier to go back through your pull of songs and pick songs that are about the same subject. With Reynolds Station in particular, I had probably, so there's 10 songs on that record. I had probably, maybe I had 5 or 6 songs that I knew went with that subject, but 4 songs, I bet, for that record, I actually sit down and wrote for that record, and knew that they were going to go on that record with the subject matter being what it was. So I had a little bit more of an aim with it. Whereas 206, I had there was 8 songs on there, which is a relatively short LP, but those songs, they were already in the chamber. Like I said, I went through the book and they were there for me. I was like, oh, this is the story's here. Like, I just have to lay them down in a way that they sound good, Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to write songs. Mine have both albums have been very personal, but I would love honestly to. I'm already thinking about new music. We're about 6 months out on 206, so it's already getting to the point where I'm need to be thinking about what I'm going to do next, and one of the things is I'm gonna put some music out that's maybe not as personal, maybe that's about something else or about a subject that's not of me, So
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, there is a beauty in being able to tell stories because, like you said, people tend to relate, see themselves in that. And were there any folks that that you just kind of looked up to or gravitated toward in the songwriting world as you kind of found out there were songwriters behind the songs?
absolutely, Daryl Scott's one of my biggest songwriting heroes, and actually I got to cover one of his songs on 206. The song "River Take Me" is a Daryl Scott song, and we did a version of that for that, and but he's a huge inspiration. John Prine, just a ginormous John Prine fan. Let's see, Doug Stone, big '90s country. He penned a bunch of the '90s country songs that you know. Hal Ketchum's a big influence. All guys that most people wouldn't even know their names, But I always gravitated toward singer-songwriters.
Well, and then, like you said, your first album, Reynolds Station, came out in 2020. First off, that's a great time to be putting out music back then.
Yeah.
But like you said, it was a very personal collection, of kind of autobiographical songs. See, sometimes I stumble on my words. That talk about kind of your childhood, kind of growing up in rural America during the amphetamine epidemic. So, what was it like putting those songs together and kind of writing in that world?
Very tough. It was very tough because it was a story that I needed to tell that was my story, but the story that's veined through Reynolds Station is a lot of other people's story too. And it's a story that a lot of people that those songs are about probably didn't want brought up again. They'd rather that be left alone. My mother being one of them. My mother, she's been 15 years clean from amphetamines and lives an entirely different life now and has well put that behind her. But that wasn't the case when I was a kid, and I lived through that, and so it was almost therapeutic to put those songs out. It was almost for me, it was like putting closing the book on something for me. But to do that, I also had to dig some skeletons out and bring them out into the world, and that was tough because I love my mother very much, and I'm very proud of her and how far she's came, and love other family members very much who have done the same that maybe I've mentioned in that record. And there's a couple songs about my Aunt Jennifer. There's the song called "Live at That" says, "Young sister Jenny sure came home with plenty," and my Aunt Jennifer was a reoccurring character throughout Reynolds Station. I honestly, until I got it done, I didn't realize how much she popped up. And most of the stuff I talk about her in some of there's a Live at That's kind of an upbeat, funny song. There's a tribute song to her, but she's not with us anymore. She passed away in 2007. So that was tough. I'm not only telling somebody's story that's maybe put it behind them, but I'm telling somebody's story that's not even with us anymore, that's not even here to defend themselves if there was anything to defend. I don't feel like I went that deep in on it. But at the end of the day, even though that story was those people's, it was mine as well, and it was something that I needed to tell and something I felt like I needed to get off of my chest and my heart. And my mom has a love-hate relationship with that album. She knows what it's for. She loves it so much. I know she does. But it's also very painful for her. The press, the songs were one thing. But then, just like this, the press we had to do when we were putting out Reynolds Station, because it was my first time really diving into PR. And, man, every interview, I was talking about that stuff. And, the songs are kind of... they're deep. You have to kind of dig around in them to get what's going on in them. But then when people are asking you, hey, what's that about? And you actually have to tell it and explain it to people and lay it out. Some of that stuff was hard for her to read and hard for her to hear. And that was tough, but it was what it was supposed to be, and I'm very proud of that record still yet. And I think she is too, and so is anybody else that was involved with it.
I was going to say, you were able to put out two pretty cool records that tell a lot of stories that I think people, not just in our hometowns and where we live nowadays and all across America, can kind of relate to with what's going on. But you also received a ton of great feedback on those albums, whether it was from American Songwriter, Glad Magazine. What was it like to, it's one thing to do art, it's another to put it out there and be judged, and it's even better to get judged well.
Yes, well, that's the hardest part for me, man. Is because like I said, I love the studio so much, and here's the thing: there ain't nobody that stands up on a stage and waves their arms and says, "Hey, look at me," that don't like attention. I don't care who they are or what they say. That's why we do it. You know what I mean? I can fulfill my heart's desire of playing music in my bedroom at home with the door shut, man. If you've chose to go out and stand on a stage with the lights on and tell people you're playing there, you probably like attention a little bit. There ain't nothing wrong with that, So here's the thing. I can go to the studio and make art all day long, but, man, it's very nerve-wracking for me to put music out. It has been both times. I'm a anxious mess for months, and I feel sorry for my family when I'm doing it, man, because I'm not a horror to be around. I'm just emotional, and I'm nervous, and I want it to do good. And not only do I want it to do good, but I want it to be received well. I want people to understand and have a little bit of appreciation for it. I don't care if it skyrockets in streams or nothing like that. I just want the person that does hear it to at least understand what I'm trying to do and have some kind of appreciation for what I'm trying to do.
Well, and like I said, you've gotten great feedback on it. And in between your albums, because like you said, Road Station came out in 2020, and then 206 dropped earlier this year. I read where you worked on honing your craft, though, in front of live audiences. Why was that important for you to kind of, you kind of gotten the studio thing down, but getting the live show down as well?
Yeah, that's always, I started on that, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where I feel like I feel like that's where I cut my teeth, was being in front of people and learning to play, and to this day, I kind of consider it two different worlds almost. There's an entertainment side of things, and then there's an art side of things, and there's entertainment shows that I play, and then there's more artsy shows that I play, and it's very interesting. I like both, there's certain nights I love to go out and play for a couple hours and mix a bunch of covers in and try to sell my songs with the medicine and the applesauce, method. But then there's nothing like those maybe writer's rounds or singer-songwriter nights where you get to go out and do a listening room where there are signs that say, "Hey, everybody, shut the hell up," you know what I mean, and sit and just pay attention, and you've got just people on their toes listening, man. That's my favorite probably, but there's a lot of different angles to this world that I live in, this music world that I live in. The other angle is I do a lot of acoustic stuff where it's just me. Travel, and most of my traveling is doing that. But I also do band shows. I've got a band. I've got several different versions of a band that I put together, and I'll go out and do those through the summertime for parties and things like that. And again, I have a love for both of them so much. If I go and I'm doing a couple months of acoustic shows, I'll be like, man, I want to jam with somebody, and I'll crave that band show. And then vice versa, just to be completely honest, if I've been out with a band for a month before and think, if I don't get out of this van with these guys, I'm going to jump.
Just tuck and roll, right? Tuck and roll out of the van.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure they felt the same way, So, yeah, it's interesting, man. There's there's all kinds of pulls and tugs of this stuff. So.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I've seen you perform, like you said, you perform all types of shows. Like I've even seen you kind of in retirement homes or senior citizen
Sure.
community type things. How special are some of those performances where you kind of just get to have fun with maybe a different audience than you normally would?
Yeah, those are very special to me. Those are, well, in themselves, those are another completely different experience for me. That's my, I think everybody should have a charity. You can go out and do all kinds of things for charity, but if you've got one thing that lays on your heart, there's nothing wrong with just sticking to that lane and making that your thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, do whatever you can for everybody, but for me, I've always had a deep seed in my heart for the elderly community, and so that's always I've did stuff for St. Jude's and love doing stuff for hospitals, and I've even helped out with some of the homeless facilities in town. Went and played for some of those folks before. My very favorite thing, the thing that fulfills me the most, is probably going out and playing for those retirement homes, man. And a couple of years ago, I even put a whole tour together that was matched with another local tour that I had going on for a whole summer, where if I was going to a town, I also had booked where I would go to the local retirement home in that town and play a show early on before I played the bar show. So I did that for an entire summer, and it was a lot. It was a lot, man, because it takes, your whole day. There's a lot more traveling early and things like that to get those things done. But, man, what I learned was going to some of those towns, especially some of the more out-of-the-way towns, some of those facilities, they don't get a lot of entertainment through there. They don't get a lot of people through there. Some of them are so far and remote that there's not a lot of family that's even coming to visit those folks, man. So it's just something very special when you go into a place like that. And heck, I think they would have been just as glad to see me if I just wanted to come hang out and talk, But to come play for, I mean, I swear nothing's ever made me feel like Steven Tyler more than going playing for those folks, man. They appreciate it so much, and they get into it so much. They're so thankful to have something like that coming in, and there's nothing that can make you feel better than that.
I was gonna say it's beyond impactful. And then, did you ever expect after a show to have people come up to you and want you to sign things, and even have fans that are 10, 11, 12, maybe younger as well, that are enjoying your music?
It still freaks me out. I still don't know what to. I'm still very strange about it, to be honest. And sometimes, and here's the thing. Here's what I've learned is I think a lot of artists are. I think more so than you think. I think that artists are like that, because it's just something that doesn't register with everybody. And I know I've had artists that I looked up to, that I got to meet, or I maybe bum rushed them or something at a show. I was like, oh my God, you're my biggest fan. And they acted so strange. And at the time, I thought they were being rude, But looking back on it, it's nothing you can prepare yourself for, And it's daunting sometimes. That's the best word for it. It's, I have to ask myself sometimes, are you being serious?
Yes,
Are you being serious right now? And every time I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? Are you being an asshole? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm making sure this isn't a joke, or the cameraman gonna jump out. Something, But,
be on TikTok somewhere.
Yeah, I honestly do still feel that way about it most of the time, and so, and I'm getting better with it, but yeah, it's something I love and appreciate very much, but I sometimes have a hard time wrapping my head around it. I'm just me, I'm just some podunk hillbilly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I love to ask this question too, because when you talk about performing and things like that, like you said, you've got your own songs, but doing what you do, you tend to do some covers as well, mix and match in there. What's one of your favorite songs, whether it's yours or someone else's, to perform these days?
Ooh, that's a good question. One of my favorite songs to perform is probably "Easier Alone." I love that song a lot. It's been off the new record. That one always gets a good rise out of the crowd. And then if I had to pick a cover, I've had a Dan Seals song that I've sang for years since I've been playing. Probably it's called "Everything That Glitters Isn't Gold," and we almost put it on this last record. And I love doing that song. I kind of do my own version of it. It's a little more of a halftime thing that I do to it, and I get a good reaction out of it, and people seem like they really enjoy it, and that makes me feel good. So I love playing that song.
Like I said, it's always one of my favorite questions because I never know what I'm gonna get on that. And
Yeah.
like I said, you got 206 dropped earlier this year. You hit rental stations a couple years ago. What else can folks expect from you the rest of 2024? We're almost halfway done with the year.
That's insane. I was just talking to my fiance about that and telling her I can't believe we're both big Jason Isbell fans, and we usually try to make his ramen shows, and they just announced yesterday that they're about to announce those again, and it seemed like we just went to that. It's every October. I thought, man, we're already there again. Like, this has flown by, And I've been so busy this year. This album has done really well, and I'm very thankful for that, and very fortunate that I've got to run around and play it for people. But because it's been so busy, it's just flown by. It seems like it shouldn't be as late in the year as it is. But I've also had to look up and think, man, I'm getting about 6 months out, and usually 6 months to a year is when you, especially if you have a little bit of success with something, or even something that's halfway well received, people are probably going to be wondering what the next thing's going to be before too long. And so I've just gotten into that mode, to be honest. I've just gotten into it, and my summer's jam-packed. I just got back from Alaska, been home for 2 weeks playing shows around here, and then going to Wisconsin next week. I'll be up in Wisconsin for a week, and so I'm moving around a lot. I think once I get back from Wisconsin, I've got about a month of pretty close to home shows, and I'll probably use that time to think about what we want to do next. I think I'm an album guy. I always will be. I love and appreciate an album, and that's the way it's the only way I want to listen to music most of the time. So it's the only way that I've ever thought about putting it out. But with today's day and time, I think it would be very beneficial for me to maybe think about doing an EP and maybe just release singles. And so with 206 still being as young as it is, I think I've been thinking that maybe the next mode I'll do 5 singles and put them out to have some songs out for the folks, man, that are patiently waiting on them, and then maybe do that for a year until I can think of another album to put together. But I'll never not put albums out. That's the way I think music should be received. So
I like it. I like it. I can't wait to see what you cook up. Whether it's another concept album, maybe it's just something out of the blue. We'll see what happens. And
I don't think it's going to be, man. I think I said I didn't want to do another concept album when I did 206, but it just landed. There was no way not to. I was like, man, I'm going to do 2 concept records in a row. And I'm glad I did, but I've been thinking the whole time. I've been like, all right, listen, we just need to put a record out. Let's just find a bunch of good songs and put them out. And the thing is, I've got a whole drawer full of songs that I think are worth. That's the thing. If I've got 40 songs, I know that 20 of them are probably show ready or whatever. Some of them are very personal. They're songs I would never release. They're just for me, But the second thing, this is something I've been talking about, is I am experimenting a lot with the idea of doing other people's songs. I've got so many friends that are songwriters right now that I've only ever thought about doing my own songs. And I think some of the country music community, especially some of those guys, they just lean on songwriters. They're doing all other people's songs just because they're not songwriters. But for me, I think I would love to, not because I can't write a record or whatever. I've proven that I can. You know what I mean? I've got two decent records, but I've got some buddies that just have some awesome songs, and they're the kind of guys that I don't think that they're gonna make a record anytime soon or anything like that. And I just hate to see these songs just sit, man. I'm like, man, they're so fantastic, and I've talked to a couple of them about maybe taking that avenue. So that might be a thing. I might do a record of songs from my friends. Yeah.
And that could be the title. Who knows?
But see, that's a concept. It's a concept if I do songs that are all written by other people too. So I can't do that. See, it's got to be so.
I have a feeling this next month you're going to be working on that plan again and seeing what you can come up with.
I know it.
Well, Josh, man, this has been a blast. Thanks for talking about your music, your life, and sharing a drink with me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. Cheers to you. Thank you for having me on.
Find more from Hops and Spirits at hopspirits.com.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.